Hi everyone, it's Carolyn from In the Gray, and today I'm going to show you my garden. Okay, so as you can see, our peach tree is making it. We have pulled off all of the fruits except for 3, just so I can see if I can taste one this year. We did go ahead, I don't know why we didn't think of it before, but put some stakes in to try and help hold it steady from the wind. So this is my DIY solution. I had some of those plant stakes, put them there with some cotton string, and it seems to be helping a lot. We have our beautiful sunny knockout rose, which I'm so excited that we've put in. We have the daylily. Our woolly lamb's ear is just looking as lush as ever. Our thyme plant is flowering, so that's interesting. I have been harvesting from the thyme already. Here we have first-hand critter involvement, trying to dig up my sage. See if we can just, poor guy. Let's see if he'll pull through. The purple basil did not pull through. That's it right there. The parsley tried to bolt, so we trimmed that off. I also planted some parsley seeds around it. If you see these tiny seedlings here, these are parsley seedlings. Our Emily basil's doing okay. The cinnamon basil really could look better. The oregano is looking wonderful. I'm going to start drying that. I've already started drying some of the marjoram. The lemon basil is just looking terrible. And the amaranth. And of course our row of irises. I did finally stake this iris flower. And finally we have the bed that I planted some okra in it, but I don't have any okra coming up, probably due to the temperature and probably due to all of these weeds. So I have to get back in here and pull this out and get it squared away so I can transplant some in here. Okay, so we have our Tricolor Sage growing in a pot here. This was a transplant from a nursery, so it's doing really well. In our other pots, we have our Transplanted Rosemary. This is the sedum that I went ahead and just planted for here, planted in this pot for right now. Our horehound is not looking awesome, so I've trimmed some off to try and stimulate some new growth. The chives are doing well. That's more horehound. You can see the dill is starting to come up with our lone strawberry. And then our bee balm is doing great. I haven't started trimming anything from this. This is our lemon balm, and I have been harvesting from the lemon balm almost daily for fresh tea, and I have dehydrated some. Our eggplant is holding on. This is my first time growing eggplant, so I don't really know a whole lot about it. I know it likes it warm, and just like the rest of the country, we have had a strange, very cold spring. So I'm just waiting to see what happens there. We have the chamomile. All the little guys are starting to get a little bit of fluff to them. I trimmed back this oregano and all this new life started coming up. Remember I told you all, if you prune your herbs, it just really revitalizes them. And our petunias, they need to have their dead flowers removed. Our petunias are looking nice and pretty. So you all may recall that I planted some sugar snap peas. I think I put them in the ground in February. They didn't come up until March, but have been constantly attacked by birds where they're eating their leaves, so they haven't been able to thrive, and we've got no peas. And so I'm taking a different strategy. I bought some of these large ceramic pots last year, and my mom gave me a bird net, and so we're gonna see what happens. So let me show you that. So I came out here, this very first one right here, it's the very first one that came up. It came up, I saw it, and I came out here maybe 2 hours later, and there were already like 4 peas plucked from the pot, which I planted them really thickly anyway, but I put this bird netting on, nothing else has happened. So I'm very excited to hopefully have some sugar snap peas. We really enjoy them. And they're not inexpensive at the store. So as you all can see, I haven't taken out the mustard yet. I have actually been harvesting some mustard greens for breakfast. I did dehydrate, I think it was about 10 of these giant leaves, and I got a pint jar of dehydrated mustard. And I took the stems of those and I am fermenting them. I don't think that this is the kind of mustard that is used for the Asian fermented mustard. I think they use mustard cabbage, but I decided, what's the harm? If we don't like it, we won't eat it, which isn't that much different now. So because we've had the cold spell and I wasn't really ready to transplant my peppers, since the last garden tour where we saw the aphids on the kohlrabi, we have since, in the last week or so, seen ladybugs on this mustard. Now, if you don't know, ladybugs eat aphids. They are their predator. So we want to encourage the ladybugs. And if you didn't know, ants actually farm aphids. So they eat the waste of the aphids. And so if you have ants, they will promote the infestation of aphids. So take a look for that. So, but we sprayed our kohlrabi with neem oil, and we have left the mustard for this last week in hopes that it will encourage the ladybug population. Now what I have noticed, okay, so I've just turned over the mustard leaf, and if you look there, and if you look, you see that little cluster of yellow eggs? Those are ladybug eggs. So I've looked it up. Those are ladybug eggs. Typically, if I find anything like that, I am squashing it, because I had such a difficult time with squash bugs last year and them laying eggs, and with the caterpillars laying their eggs. And so it's worth the extra minute to try and figure out what it is. And this happens to be something that I want in my garden. And so we've actually been looking at building some kind of insect house, a ladybug house or something like that, to try to encourage the ladybugs so that they will naturally and organically keep the aphid population down. So with all of that being said, you can see our spinach is really thriving. The lettuce is going berserk. We have harvested, believe it or not, a few heads of lettuce out of here. And we're going to have to just start eating more salad to eat that up, because I need it to come out of the garden bed. Our cilantro is huge. It has gone to seed because we did have a few warm days. And so we're planning to just, since it's not taking up that much space, let it go ahead and go to seed, collect the coriander, and use that. And that's another thing I was hoping to do maybe with the mustard, is the mustard, ooh, is this it? It's happening. So the mustard, at least that one seems to be going to seed, which you can use the mustard seed in cooking, pickling, etc. So I'm going to try that. You can see over here, I wasn't fully mistaken about everything. because I really think that this is a broccoli or a cauliflower, one of the two. And this is distinctly different from this in texture and all of that. It does look like a cabbage, so I am hopeful about that. As we move down, we have radishes in here. This is our tatsoi. All that insect damage is from aphids. We have our red Russian kale, which is doing awesome. We've been putting this in our breakfast scrambles as well. And our rainbow Swiss chard is doing okay. Now down here, I do have, see this little red, do you see those little red seedlings down there? Those are the Chinese multicolored spinach, which I'm hoping is going to make a comeback once I clear some of this other stuff out. So here, these are collard greens. I am 99% sure. So I'm going to clear out these other collard greens that are around it. I don't really need many. And down here in the forefront is the cabbage. So I do believe these next door are cabbage as well. And then we have our kohlrabi, which is filling out nicely, recovering from the aphid damage. None of it has started to bulb up yet. But we'll see. This is my first time growing it. I'm enjoying it. I think it's beautiful. So in this bed, these are all a bunch of radishes that I still need to pull. My nasturtium is peeking in there. And we have this kale that is going to seed. So this is what it looks like. And we'll harvest the seeds once these pods dry out. Now the pods are edible, usually when they're a little bit smaller. But these large pods are pretty developed, and we're just waiting for them to dry out. Now if you look here, the peas are starting to make a comeback. I think it's only because they've been shielded by this radish foliage. And so I do have a seedling down here. This is a Chinese red noodle bean. And that's what I'm hoping is going to come up on this trellis. You can see on the other side of the trellis that a couple of radishes have gone to seed. When they get that really tall stalk and they're going to flower, they're going to seed. Because of just a few warm days. That'll do it, just a few warm days. And so we have a seedling down here. This is either a cucumber or a melon. We have another one. Like, look at that radish. Just asking to come out. But it has been protecting this tiny cucumber or melon. Okay, so you can see there's some onions here. There's onions from there all the way to the front of the bed in the back. We have some carrots coming up, even more carrots. We've got some mushrooms, likely a consequence of our compost, which is a good thing in terms of soil health. So I just wanted to talk a minute about soil health. It's something that's incredibly important when you're trying to grow plants. And one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that there are tons and tons of microorganisms that we don't even understand that live in the soil. One of the things you can do to promote the growth of those healthy microorganisms is to make sure that your soil is aerated, to make sure that it's not compacted down. And so that's why we have raised beds, that's why we don't walk on our gardens, etc., etc. Another really important component of that soil is fungi. And so when I see these mushrooms in the garden, I think that that's a good thing. That's something that's adding to the biodiversity of the garden bed. So someone asked how we got this great looking soil. And we ordered compost is how we get this great looking soil. In the bottom of these beds when we built them, we put some organic matter like sticks and logs and things like that. And then we ordered some garden mix from St. Louis Compost, which is a mix of topsoil and compost, and put that in. And then this year we just put on the top a couple of inches of their premium compost. Now we have a composter that we are working on creating our own compost. We're probably not going to be able in our small space to produce the amount of compost that we need, but whatever we do produce can help in fertilizing and adding to the biodiversity of our soil. The more sources you have for compost, the more different microorganisms that live in that soil, the better it will be for your garden. We also are trying to address this soil issue in our yard. Our yard, where the grass is very, very compacted. And when it's very compacted, it promotes the growth of plants that we don't want, or weeds, like creeping Charlie and violets and clover. I know clover isn't a weed to everyone, and neither are violets. Since we have 2 dogs, we prefer to have grass so that it's not muddy or splotchy or creating a problem with getting rid of their waste. So we're working on that. We're thinking about getting some compost for the yard, just for the grass, and trying to promote the soil health there. Okay, so here we have just more carrots. This is my Marbury scalloped squash, my very favorite, with its little bird protection over the top of it. It's probably okay now. I just try to protect them when they're just little seedlings because the birds have been so into it this year. So we have our beets, some more carrots, and some more beets. You can see there's some different kinds of beets. I planted, I think, 4 different varieties. So we'll see what happens when we harvest. We have our little amaranth. And we have our 4 okra seedlings. This one will be staying. The other 3 are going to have to go from this area. It is just not large enough to hold that many okra plants, and they are too close together. So I'll be moving them to the bed out front, or to some other area. Our Dinosaur Kale is rocking. So at least I recently found out you can take one of these stems, break it off, put it in water and root it, and propagate your own Dinosaur Kale plants. Now these are pretty easy to grow from seed. I just popped these seeds in the ground in October of last year, and they are just continuing to grow. However, if you're in a place where you don't have time to grow from seed, or you're gardening on a budget and you have just bought a plant start, you can definitely propagate those. These are our Fava Beans. This is the second round of Fava Beans that I planted, and they are just starting to flower and are also being attacked either by birds or by ants. In this area, we have another tiny okra on the right. That's my cucamelon on the left. Now these are the Miss Mars sunflowers, which were completely ravaged by birds and are making a comeback, so I'm very happy about that. Now we're going to talk about our newest trellis, which I am so excited about. So first, around this flagpole, I've planted some zinnias back here. I planted, I think, some daisies right here, but they have not come up yet. We have this lone carrot that I did not plant there. The echinacea is doing okay. It hasn't really jumped forward, probably because of the weather. Okay, so here we have the Chino squash coming up, which should fill out this trellis nicely. I'm actually going to plant 1 tomato on this trellis because my mom gave me an extra. It's a Ukrainian purple. I'm really excited about it. So I'm going to plant that back here. I have the flowers in the front. Those are zinnias and marigolds. We have some more zinnias over here in the back and something very tiny coming up that I'm not exactly sure what it is. And then we have our first round fava beans. I don't know if you can see that, but that is a bean pod. So we are on our way to fava beans. Now, they get significantly larger. The beans are about that size, so I'm excited to see about that. I was initially thinking I was going to have to pull these out to put all tomatoes right here. That's why I planted the other set, so we'll see what happens with space. Back here we have the Armenian white cucumber, which hasn't been looking great, but we have several of them, so if something happens, we can definitely thin those out. Our potatoes have gotten just a fresh covering of straw and some grass clippings in hopes that they will enjoy that. This is my first time growing potatoes, so I've heard they really like the nitrogen, and so I'm taking that to heart. We have our mints, lemon balm, apple mint, and in here we have our lemon balms and our mints, and I have been harvesting from this almost daily for tea, and I've been drying. I didn't want to over harvest it first until it was really settled in, but it's looking like it is really taking hold in this container. Okay, so we have our Autumn Beauty sunflowers. This one is really looking amazing. I think that is probably because it's getting more sun. This is under our lilac tree. These two in the back are mammoth. They will get more sun as we get more sun in general, and they should take off. Our yarrow is looking good from our last transplant. Okay, and in our garden tower we have that row of dragon tongue bush beans. You can see our squash here and our savory. And let me just turn it to show you. There's another squash. There's actually two in there. I've got to thin this guy out. So those are all looking really well. We have our determinate tomatoes up here. So we'll see how those turn out. Down here in the pots, we have some more echinacea and some calendula. And just look at that rose. I think it's called a cosmic purple, but a beautiful rose, tons of flowers. Behind it, it has a mammoth sunflower and a couple of calendula behind it. So let's talk tomatoes. Now, I've already told you all the varieties of tomatoes I've put in. This is the one we saved from seed. This is the borage. The purple basil are starting to bounce back. If you remember, I had a few tomatoes that were attacked by birds and topped. And if you look, do you see that guy in the middle? That is a sucker. That's another way that you could propagate from existing plants. If you have a store-bought tomato, it has a bunch of suckers, you can pull off those suckers if they're big enough, root them, and then you have a clone of that plant. So I was hoping when these birds attacked my tomatoes that they were going to throw out a sucker to try to survive, and all three of them, my Abe Lincoln, my Mortgage Lifter, and my Dark Queen, the one that I was most excited about, were the ones that were topped. And so those are making a recovery with suckers. See, they're looking okay. They're just starting to take off as the warm weather was coming. These borage are looking beautiful. Here's another tomato plant that has thrown off a couple of suckers. That's the Mortgage Lifter, and this is the Dark Queen sending out a sucker here. I am so excited. We've got some Emily basil, some more tomato plants. And you can see here, this one was the one that was so very purple, which I did not realize was a sign of stress. So this is the blue boreberries, and it is recovering nicely. We have another mammoth sunflower. In case you hadn't noticed, we're fans of sunflowers. We have some more sunflowers here in front of the deck. Look, just look at this tomato. This is a Dr. Weich's, and as you can see, it is doing significantly better than the rest of my tomatoes. I think that has to do with soil temperature because this is in a pot. It has a little bit more drainage, number one, and number two is the soil warms up more quickly. So I am very excited about this. I'm concerned that this one might be a sucker. I'm trying to prune it down, but it looks so much like the top or the crown that I may just let that one go. I've been trying to prune this pretty heavily since it's in this pot, and I'm going to need to support it somehow. But it has already set some fruit. Okay, so this is our composter, which is one that you can turn to make sure it's properly aerated and everything gets mixed up. It's just more convenient and it's more fitting for the space that we have. So we have this, and we have the vermicomposter in the garden tower, which doesn't really create compost for anywhere else, but it does fertilize itself. Okay folks, I just want to encourage you to plant something. In reality, unless you go buy a whole bunch of plant starts that are expensive and things like that, you're not really losing much. If you just have some seeds and you plant those seeds and they don't do well, you haven't lost much. So first and foremost, try. If it dies, it dies. You've learned something and you can try again. So make sure that you stay encouraged and you stay thoughtful and motivated in growing something that will not only better your life, but better our planet and the world. So I thank you for coming along with me today. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I hope to see you again. Thanks.